And I was like, I don't want to sell this. So that's how I accidentally fell into real estate is I became an accidental landlord because that's what people do when they don't want to sell. They rent it and gave myself 6 months to learn as much as I could about real estate and bought another property.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Freedom Blueprint. I'm Adrienne Green, and today I'm sitting down with my friend Brea Burger. Get ready for some amazing insights to help you build wealth and freedom through real estate. Let's get started. Thank you so much for joining me today, Brea.
Hi, thanks, Adrienne, for having me.
I am excited to hear more of your story. And what is so interesting to me and to our listeners here is Brea loved school so much. She earned a PhD in biobehavioral health. She had a dream job as an assistant professor. She had what felt like the perfect life. She could travel, impact, freedom. Life was amazing. And then it all changed, which is maybe sad, except that it led her to real estate investing and I suspect an even better life. So tell us your story there.
Yeah. So I think what happened to me is actually really normal and unfortunately isn't talked about a lot. Just how life can take you on these different trajectories. So yeah, I had this dream job. I was on the tenure track path, a school on the East Coast. I built in travel by specializing in global health and was able to take students to South Africa, Panama. I took a faculty trip to Costa Rica. So it was fantastic. And during that same time, I was in a significant relationship with someone. We had been together for 10 years and the relationship ended. And so that really got me questioning about what I wanted from life and the situation that I was in. At the same time, I had an opportunity to take a role in tech in the Bay Area. And so all of these changes were happening in my life. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll take the job. So I took the job. I left my teaching position, took the job, went to go work for Apple as a researcher for them. And corporate was so different than academia. I would say academia is more as like an entrepreneur. Like you're your own boss. You can lead your research studies. You can set up your lab how you want it. But corporate, I had like bosses telling me what to do, where to be at certain times. So at the same time, before I had left to move to the Bay Area, I had bought a primary residence in Pennsylvania. And I had just bought it. I lived there for maybe a year. And I was like, I don't want to sell this. So that's how I accidentally fell into real estate is I became an accidental landlord because that's what people do when they don't want to sell. They rent it and gave myself 6 months to learn as much as I could about real estate and bought another property.
Amazing.
Yep.
And now we are where we are now, where real estate is your whole life.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so we know your first deal was then effectively keeping that primary and renting it out. Where did it go from there?
Yeah. After 6 months of learning and like reading all of the things on Bigger Pockets, listening to all of the podcasts, one of the themes that came up was this whole idea of analysis paralysis, that a lot of first-time investors just get stuck in this, I have to consume as much information as possible, and they never take action. So that's why I gave myself a deadline. 6 months to learn, and then I'm going to go out there and I'm going to buy in the market that I know, which was Pennsylvania, Allentown to be more specific, which was a great market to be buying in at the time. I got lucky there. And so I bought myself a duplex. So I had learned all about the BRRRR method. And I was like, I'm going to do this. This sounds easy, right? You just buy something, renovate it, get it rented out, refinance, pull all your money out and repeat. Yeah, right. I learned so many lessons. It took a year to rehab the property. I fired 2 contractors. I fired 3 property managers. And I was doing this all from California while I had a full-time job. I also had a statistical consulting company and I was continuing to teach online classes for Penn State at the time. So
Wow.
all of those things going on. Yeah. But I made it through, and over, I would say the next 2 years, I made it to about 20 rentals before I really hit like the ceiling where I could not keep doing it by myself any longer.
Well, there are a few great things that I love here. One, it is possible to do this while doing a lot of other things. As you've alluded to, BRRRR is not as easy as it looks on paper. And I know you do a lot of value add now. So I'm curious if you could speak to that. You didn't give up on the BRRRR model. You guys are still doing it. What is some wisdom that you would have as, I think, a very experienced BRRRR investor for somebody who's maybe eyeing it or newer in their journey with BRRRR?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one thing that new or baby investors need to think about is what's the acceptable amount of money that they would be willing to leave in a property for them to call it a success. And so for us, it's actually anything less than 20%. right? Because if you buy
Mhm.
a property, you typically need 20-25% down. So when I underwrite, as long as we're leaving less than 20% in the deal, then we consider it a win. Now, we've had some great deals where we pull out more than we put in, and we've had some where it's like, yep, we've left 20% in. That's what it is. So you can't always have those home runs, but I would say you want to figure out what that amount of money is that's acceptable to you for leaving it in the property, and just underwrite from that perspective, because that's going to help you find a deal that will fit that.
That is a great point because there are a lot more deals out there that work if you leave something in the deal. And it's probably better to be in the game, like you're saying, getting those singles, those doubles, than on the sidelines the whole time because you can't win from the sidelines, that's for sure.
Exactly.
All right, so you got this first duplex, it took a year. What did your story look like to get from there to where you are now?
Oh, yes. As I was thinking about this interview, I was like, I can't believe I've been doing this since 2017. Sometimes it feels like I've been doing this for 20 years, and other times it feels like it just started. Yeah. So from around 2017 to 2019, 2020, I acquired about 20 units just on my own, acquiring a handful of properties every year.
Mhm.
And I reached this point where I'm like, I cannot manage this anymore myself. I need to have some strategic partnerships. All of those years, I had been talking incessantly about real estate to my sister Boston and my brother in law Logan. And at that time, they weren't quite ready, but around 2020, they were ready to jump in and do real estate. Now, I always love to tell the story. So Logan started jumping in with the business with me first. And then him and I were in cahoots with each other because we knew that Boston would be a great addition. And she only wanted to do one property a year. And I was like, yeah, right. No, no, one property a year. What are we doing? So over time, we got them Boston in the business, and she'll tell everyone she got sick of seeing all the post-it notes. So she needed to come in and actually help us get a process in place for being more organized, making sure things are done in a timely manner, just tracking all the do outs and all the tasks. So she's actually the gears that keeps the ship moving. So
Mhm.
that was one thing that really trajected the business from me going by myself, 20 units, to now we have somewhere between 160 to 175 units, somewhere in there, in 5
Wow.
different states. And we've done some other strategic partnerships along the way.
That is amazing. And it's great to see that even if that first investment purchase of that duplex was tough, you didn't give up, you persevered, you made it through, and it really led to the start of something amazing. So, what does your guys' strategy look like now? You mentioned 5 different states. I know you guys do a lot, but if we're
Yeah.
going to talk about, let's say, Q2 2025 through the end of the year, what does your strategy and your vision look like?
Yeah. So every year we have a goal setting meeting towards the end of the year for the next year where we talk about like what do we want to be focusing on. So we want to focus on simplification. So really getting our processes in place to simplify what we're doing. About 2 years ago, we were bright, shiny new objects. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I think every real estate investor goes through that. And so we really want to focus
Mhm.
on what's boring and what works. That's one thing that we'll be focusing on. The other thing that we're focusing on is strategic partnerships in order to increase capital. So we have
Mhm.
properties that cash flow. As you go into business, you're going to learn the more cash you have on hand, the stronger position you're going to be in for opportunities. So if a recession were
Mhm.
to hit, if you have cash, you can do a lot more with that. And so we are partnering with people who do flips in order to have larger amounts of capital, sort of like those windfalls come in along with that monthly cash flow. The other
Mhm.
thing that we're doing, which is non-real estate related, is we are investing in a franchise
Mhm.
as well. So we're also getting a new arm into the business that's going to be more focused, not just on real estate, but on business.
And that is such a big thing right now for real estate investors with interest rates where they are, with numbers where they are, to look at business for that cash flow piece in so many ways. I'd love to hear how you feel like your real estate investing experience, and especially that you guys are doing it at the same team, what your vision is applying that to this franchise.
Yeah. So the franchise is called Alloy. It's a group personal training fitness gym. It's a small footprint. So 1,500 to 2,000 square feet is the commercial space that's needed. And all three of us, Boston, Logan, and I, all have a background in health. So we talked about mine a little bit. Boston actually used to run a gym when she was in college. And then this is actually Logan's bread and butter. So he's had somewhere between 15 to 20 years of experience. He used to train special forces. Now he works for the organization that does certifying for strength and conditioning. He is tapped into this world, and really it puts us into a great position to start this. And then all of the skills that we've learned through real estate investing, like how to take notes, how to leverage VAs, for example, right? Through Workergenics, which is a company that you and Harley have. Note-taking tools, just how to meet with people, how to recruit people, how to incentivize people. And so we've learned all of that through real estate, which puts us in a great position to make this a successful venture for us.
I love that. I think you hit on two main things. One is like you're staying true to your prior experience and your nature. With you guys all have that health background. Sometimes when people go into business, it's like, okay, we have these wonderful healthy lifestyles, but we're going to go have an ice cream store, for example, right? And it's just out of left field because it's the business that crossed their plate. And I think that makes those are tough situations. And then second, you've got the global skills of entrepreneurship and perseverance that came from your real estate investing. I've been following a bit of your guys' franchise journey, and I'm excited to see how it goes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And then I think just to add, you talked about what someone who's considering BRRRR investing, what they should be considering. The same thing for Alloy, right? And so we're raising capital, and some people have asked us, so how can this go wrong? What's the worst thing that can happen? It's the same thing with a BRRRR. What's the worst thing that can happen? We leave 20% in a deal. Well, in this case, the worst thing that can happen is Logan has to work the business. Instead of being an owner, he goes and he works in the business until we find the right person to be on site. And so that, again, is as people think about either real estate or business, think about your worst case scenarios and how you can hedge against those situations.
Right. That's so true, because often if we actually ask that question, what's the worst that can happen? We realize it's not that we're going to be homeless living under a bridge. Part of our brain maybe wants us to think that it is. Once we realize logically what's the worst that can happen, it's a very handleable risk or worst case scenario. So I'd love to, especially with your background, Brea, to talk into that piece of real estate investing in entrepreneurship of overcoming fear, right? Overcoming that stress about what's the worst that can happen. I know you guys have persevered through so much. I know that the BRRRR investing can be very challenging. So let's talk about that mindset and that fear piece a little bit, if you would.
Absolutely. So this is something that isn't unique to me. I think this is with every single person who's even considering real estate, or who is a seasoned real estate investor, even a seasoned entrepreneur. There's always this idea of like self-doubt, fear. I play the CEO role in our business. And so it's like a lot of weight. Am I making the right decision for our team? Is this the right direction to take? Am I underwriting deals correctly? All of these things. And so there's been 3 things that I've done that have been really helpful. So one is about 5 years ago, I got a business mindset coach. Her name's Liz Carroll. And I've gone through several of her programs, and I now meet with her monthly. And she has been a great person to just reflect back to me. Okay, here's your problem. Here's how you're talking about. Why don't you try thinking about it like this way? There is so much work that I've done with her that has given me unrelenting confidence in my decisions. And that's what you need when you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, is that unrelenting confidence that you're on the right path. Believe in having a strong community of other people who are like me or even at several levels ahead. And so that's where the GoBundance Women's Group comes in. It's a network of entrepreneurs like yourself who are out there, who are facing their fears every single day. And I get to have access to them and to say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. What do you think? How can you help? And we can bounce ideas off of one another. And then I'm in another mastermind. It's called The Club. It's run by a friend and JV business partner of ours, Paul Sparks. And it's a framework for how to think about your business. And so he's taught us how to just slow things down a little bit and use particular frameworks in order to help make better decisions when it comes to our business. And so if I didn't have those things, I would be in analysis paralysis. I would have self-doubt. There would be all of this fear. And so I would encourage people, go out there, find people that are doing what you're doing, find people who are above what you're doing, who you want to aspire to be, and really work on how you think about yourself, how you think about the decisions that you're making. Because I struggle with fear every day, but I gotta like slap myself in the face, like, hey, you know how you need to be thinking.
Investing in a new market, but struggling to find the right agent? I get it. And I've built a network of investor-friendly real estate agents who understand what you need. Skip the guesswork and connect with the right agent today at adriennegreen.com/expert agent network. And I have the link for you in the show notes.
Right. And so many people, especially at the beginning, they can get caught up in like the logistics, right? I need to learn how to do A, B, or C rather than I need to learn how to think about A, B, and C, right? I need to learn how to approach or handle making that decision. And then, yes, I think great ideas there about having the right network and the right people and the right thinking for realizing it's not just about the process. Love
Yeah.
all of that. Now, you have done so much, and I think that you also spoke to shiny object syndrome, which is so prevalent. And yet, I feel like in a business, you've got to kind of try new things, figure out what works, and then prune. It sounds like you're in a pruning, refining, and simplifying year. And that's like an ongoing process, right? Grow some new branches and then prune to refine. As you have done that, can we maybe talk about a time when something didn't go as planned? And what lessons did you take away from that?
Yeah, we have a 42 unit syndication. Boston and I are GPs on it, along with other two GPs who are in Pennsylvania. And so the property's in Pennsylvania. And Yang, who is a GP, she had first found the property. It's in the market where we invest in. We have property management there. We know the market. And when she brought the property to me, it was like, yeah, let's do this. Well, the property was on auction. Okay. This was our first syndication. So not only are we learning like how to syndicate, we're also learning how to deal with like the auction and closing process. So we had 30 days to close. Okay. So from the time that we won the auction, and by the way, she quit her W-2 that week, and I was about ready to get on a plane to go to Spain for 2.5 months. And I'm walking on the plane. I'm like, holy moly, like we got this. So we had found one lender who for the first 20 days seemed like it was going to work out. And then they had some interesting requirements with title and surveying, and we weren't going to be able to close in 30 days. Now, the requirements for the auction, if you don't, you lose your deposit, which in this case is actually the 10% down payment. That was a big chunk of change. Like we could not miss that deadline. And so we had to leverage our network to find a lender that we knew that could actually close the deal. And so we had 10 days to close. We found a lender within our network, within our community who could do it. And so I think the lesson here is that when things go wrong, leverage your network, talk about it. You don't have to give like all of the details, but get out there and tell people in your network, because I will say 95% of the time, people are more than willing to help. They're more than willing to refer you to people who could help. And so that was something that was going wrong, that could have gone from wrong to worse, that was saved by our network and our community that we had been fostering.
Right. Yes. You spend so much time building up that community. And then people have such a fear of asking for help. And
yes,
ask for help. Use that network. Let them step in and help you. People love to help other people.
Yes. Yes. Especially I have found within real estate. I'm sure people have other experiences, but I will say the people that I have interacted with and who have maintained either friendships with or acquaintances with have always been more than willing to help.
I feel like in the real estate investing space, there's a very much an abundance mindset. So people realize that helping someone else is not taking away from themselves.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Now, you mentioned something else there, Brea, about how you were going to Spain for 2.5 months. And I know you, like me, are a world traveler, love to travel. For people who feel trapped by their real estate investing, it's a common issue. We really build ourselves another job with real estate investing. And yet you've done a great job you've got this very active real estate investing business, and yet you still have location freedom. I'd love for you to speak to that. What have you done with your business to have that location freedom? What makes a difference? How do you balance it?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I will say I haven't always been great at it. It's always a refining sort of process. So I don't think I could have traveled very much when I had maybe those 20 units and obviously the job and all the things. But when you do things by yourself, it's all on you. I will say that because I started out as an out-of-state real estate investor, it did force me to put processes in place that did not require me to be physically there. But that didn't mean that I had a good process with like emails and phone calls and boundaries with responding. Like everything was always a fire. But I would say over time with partnering with people and with Boston specifically, putting in some really good processes, especially with our VAs, that allows us that everything isn't a fire. It doesn't require an urgent response. We can go, we can take vacations, and then also communicating with our property management teams, and saying, hey, we're going to be on vacation the next 2 weeks, so we won't be having our meetings, but our VA is going to be sending you the email, and we still need to be, getting some updates from you guys, or just little things like that. So we can still have our pulse on the business, but we don't necessarily have to be on any given, site or location. I will say with traveling, it is easier when you're within, I would say, a 3 to 5 hour time difference. Spain was a little challenging, and that the time difference between Spain and the US made it difficult, especially more for our Colorado properties. The Pennsylvania one's not so much.
So you've got some systems in place to handle all of the tech piece, and it's that mindset as well of not treating everything like a fire, right? Having the systems and then realizing what is urgent and what can wait. Love all of that. I know that you have done a lot of work with getting those systems in place, right? With building all that piece of it, right? Running it like a business may not have been how you did things at first. So I'd love to make sure we have enough time for these closing quick fire questions, because I know you have some really fabulous responses. So I'd love to move on to them. So we have plenty of time to hear first, what is a transformational system that you've implemented in your business?
Yes. So one thing that we've done is meetings. When we first started out being in corporate, you get so bogged down with meetings that the last thing I wanted to do with the real estate business was to have more meetings. And so I was very anti-meeting. But about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we made an effort that every single week we're meeting with each of our property managers, at least the ones that hold a substantial portfolio. And we go through all of our metrics, all of the maintenance items, any properties we're going to be purchasing, the status of rehab. And that has really kept things moving along, where we used to feel like, wow, a month has gone by, nothing is improving, nothing is progressing. And so the meetings, and then also meetings with each other. So Boston, Logan, and I will have a weekly meeting on Thursdays. And then Boston and I have our own separate meeting. We call it the process meeting, just to talk about where we're at with process, what's going on, what needs to be done, who needs to be doing what. And that has been extremely helpful in keeping essentially all hands where they need to be, and eyes on everything we need to have eyes on.
Right.
Also, hiring the right people. So we've added a full-time VA and a part-time VA. Our part-time VA does all of our social media. That was really bogging me down, having to have that be my responsibility. And then the full-time VA works directly with Boston on all of the process tasks. She's calling utility companies. She's managing our leases. She's tracking if our utilities are increasing, so we can put that on the property manager's radar. And then we've also hired a fractional CFO as well, because that needed to come off Boston's plate. It was at her range of limitations with what she could do with the size that we had. And so we're getting our books to even a better place, and we're going to be able to project where our finances are going to be. Instead of looking back, we're going to be able to look forward. So meetings, hiring the right team members.
And what I'm hearing is you got a lot of the bottom 80% off your plate with those virtual assistants. You got the social media and all those operational things that are just routine off your plate. So then you can have time for those high level meetings and that top 20% work.
Yes, absolutely.
And for people to plan, how long do these meetings take? How did you approach them? If somebody's like, oh my gosh, I would love to meet with my property manager every week, but they're intimidated to have that ask, how would you recommend they approach that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So anytime that I actually hire a property manager, I talk to them about how they like to be communicated with. And so that really opens the door for, are you open to having in-person meetings? So that's at least a boundary that I set now moving forward with some of our newer property managers that we have onboarded. With our Pennsylvania property management team, I had such a good relationship with them prior, and they were also experiencing it on their end. They were growing and it was chaos. They were growing and it was chaos. And so us providing the boundary and the system for at least our portfolio has been actually really helpful for them too. And so we send out an email 48 hours before. It has all of the items, and it usually, rolls over from the previous week. What's an update on this? Where are we with this? And then they can get some written responses to us. And then on the meeting, we can go through them. And our meetings typically range 30 minutes to an hour. So it doesn't
Okay.
take a huge amount of time.
And do you think that an investor would need to have a certain portfolio size with a property manager to merit that? Like, where do you think that would stand?
Yeah, I think so. For our markets where we only have like one property, we have a single family house in North Carolina. We have a single family house in Arizona. We're not meeting with them every single week. What we will do is send like a monthly email and get a response back from them on some of the metrics, like where are we at with rent collection, have any maintenance items come up. But I would say too, you want to keep in mind that your property manager's time is also very valuable. Until we probably have about 5 units with them, you don't really need to have a weekly meeting, especially if the property is performing. So
Mhm.
bear that in mind.
Right. Okay. And then what is your go-to tool for managing operations?
There's so many good tools. So I love AI right now. I think learning your AI tools is going to help your business. So we use Notion for note taking that has some AI features built in. We use
Mhm.
ChatGPT. That's been really helpful in making our business more efficient. We use Monday.com in order to track
Mhm.
progress with our VAs. And then our VA who handles the social media side of things, she's actually built out the process for us, where she's built out the
Mhm.
calendar. It has the content. I can go in there and edit, give her the thumbs up on each of the week's content, and then she goes and she posts it. And so leveraging your hires who actually know how to build a better process than you do is also really important. And so for me, I can just delegate, be hands off, and say, you know this world better than I do. You create the system. Just tell me what you
Mhm.
want me to do. And that has been helpful in getting our business, like you said before, getting that 80% off so we can focus on the 20%.
I love it. And everything you're saying, I'm like, yes, I'm a cheerleader for that. Huge fan.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then finally, Brie, what is a book that's been transformational in your investing journey?
I have a few books, yes. So my relationships with books and the type of books that I'm reading has changed. Where I used to consume a lot of like how-to books. You know, you have Rich Dad Poor Dad. There's so many books out there on out-of-state real estate investing, BRRRR method, all of that. And they're great. But I about the middle of last year got to this point where I was like, man, I just want like a mentor who's done this amazing stuff. Where can I get that information? So I've actually started to read autobiographies by people. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
right? Because there are a lot of people who have been successful in business, like Rockefeller. He's dead, but I've read his autobiography. So now he's my mentor, right? So that's a way to think about
Right.
it. And so I've read autobiography by Hetty Green, who actually Warren Buffett has learned a lot of lessons from her. She was the richest woman in America during the time of the Rockefellers and Carnegie. So
Okay.
her lessons has been mind your pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves. So that really reiterated the importance of like, hey, we need to get a fractional CFO. We need to be tracking the books in a different sort of way, right? Rockefeller, I've read his autobiography. He operated from a place of not being an emotional and taking a ton of notes and partnering with the right people. And
Mhm.
so that really has reiterated those values inside of our business. Isidore Sharp, I read his autobiography. He is the founder of Four Seasons, and he had this great emphasis on culture and values and making business decisions from the values that you have. And
Right.
so I am just obsessed with autobiographies now and learning from people who have done amazing things because it's sometimes really hard to find a mentor. So I'm going to those books.
I love that. And that's definitely a fresh take on things. So for our listeners who are looking for a fresh take, looking for something new, maybe you're, I feel you, Brie. I feel like I have read a million how-to books. And yeah, I love reading other people's stories. That's a great way to do it. Amazing. And then, Brie, if somebody would like to reach out to you to follow up, to learn more, or have a question, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can go to my Instagram page. It's Brie underscore REI for FI. That's FOR FI. So Brie underscore real estate investor for financial independence. They can also reach out to Boston. So hers is family of REI, family of real estate investors, and shoot us a DM. Happy to connect with people, answer questions, talk real estate all day. So would love that.
Perfect. And we'll have those links in the description below, guys, so you can go check them out in the show notes. Definitely love connecting on Instagram. It's where everybody's at. So get there. It's cool. Now, thank you so much again, Brie. What an amazing conversation. If you loved today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with a fellow investor. Who do you know who could benefit from hearing Bree's story, go ahead and shoot it over to them. Your support helps us bring even more value-packed episodes to you. And until next time.